Perek Chaf, this is now part 3. And as we open the Tanakh, we're on page 392. I want to spend some time in the Pshat and some time in a halachic sugya that we'll see is actually on the page, learn from the page, and of course, unresolved and still debated hotly among not only the Rishonim, but the Achronim as well, to try to understand. So to recap, Sheva ben Bichri has gone up north to Avel Mechola. It's in the area somewhere around Kiryat Shmona, Metula. It's somewhere there. We're not 100% sure where it is, but we know the approximate vicinity. And so it is that David is extremely concerned because on his way up, he's not simply running there, the rebel, Sheva ben Bichri. He's taking people with him. And he's at a particularly tentative moment, a moment of uncertainty for Klal Yisrael, recalling that David has returned, that there are still tensions simmering between the tribe of Yehuda and the other Shvatim. The reality that David has, for reasons that I believe had to do with trying to encourage people to repair and mend the feeling of civil war by appointing as his chief of staff Amasa, who had been the chief of staff of Avshalom. Avshalom, of course, the rebel, and the son of David. And Avshalom, the rebel, the son of David, and also he who was killed by Yoav ben Tzeruya. Now, David HaMelech, I said last time, kills 2 birds with 1 stone by appointing Amasa. 1, healing the wounds of the nation. I have no qualms and claims anymore against the people who might have erroneously followed after Avshalom, my son, the rebel. I want to bind the wounds of the nation, as the expression goes, and it's on my mind these days. But second, to replace Yoav ben Tzeruya. Already in this perek we learned, once again, the king saying, it's enough with you, Bnei Tzeruya, with your hard-headedness and your constant desire to push forward issues of statehood, but at the cost of other kinds of values. I'm done. So he appoints Amasa. Unfortunately, Amasa tarries. And the question is, why does he tarry? What we saw last time was that Amasa tarries, according to Chazal, because he's learned. He's learning. There's learning going on in the Beis Medrash, and he doesn't want to mevatel anybody. So we saw there's a little halachic piece there. But let's talk about it from the Tanakh perspective in terms of the story. What it means is, and this is the scene that we saw last time that we learned inside, the Gemara describes the trial of Yoav. Yoav will eventually be put on trial, spoiler alert. And in that trial, he'll be held to account for killing 2 people, Avner ben Ner and Amasa. So Avner, in terms of the case with Avner, Yoav makes a counterclaim that it was related to the fact that Avner ben Ner had killed his brother when he could have used lesser force to neutralize him. Case 1. Case 2, what about Amasa? He says, well, Amasa rebelled against the king. Now, what does it mean Amasa rebelled against the king? Of course he rebelled against the king. He was the chief of staff of Avshalom, the rebel. But the way it's formulated here, it's that he tarried. So the Gemara has the court case as the counterclaim against Yoav is, oh yeah? Well, no, he was actually doing the right thing, because when someone's engaged in a mitzvah, you don't take them from it, do something else. And so Amasa was justified in tarrying, and you had no business killing him. Okay, that's the Gemara describes. Mipinu anu chayim, we live from their mouths, what they say. So that's the story. But there are other dimensions here. There was an insurrection going on. So there's incredible stress. Amasa says, Beis Medrash time. And technically, he might have been right. Technically. But there is a broader question about the fact that the house was on fire, that there was a whole group of people following Sheva ben Bichri, went up to Avel Mechola, up north, were holed up there, and were setting up another kingdom. So that's very strange. And the king, if he can forgive Shmuel, but he can forgive Amasa. Shelley's correct. He does. He just wrote in the chat. He forgives Shimi for rebelling. He forgives Amasa. Not only does he forgive Amasa, there's a book by Doris Kearns Goodwin, if you're interested. It's called Team of Rivals. Some of you might have read it. So you might recall that her basic thesis, over 500 pages of drawing it out, is that lahavdol, a felfdalit, but we learn lessons in both directions, is that Lincoln, lahavdol, made sure that the people in his cabinet were specifically his rivals, hence team of rivals. And the idea of bringing the people on side, but also keeping them in the mix, and also the interests that each of them represented were then part of the story instead of standing outside the story, right? And that's perhaps, I don't remember the book well enough. I know Lincoln was very well versed in the Tanakh, and therefore it's possible he knew about this story with Amasa, etc., and bringing in the rivals, if you will, and giving a reprieve to others. I gave the example again, lahavdol, of Churchill in Victory, Magnanimity. The idea that instead of pummeling the enemy that you've defeated, find a way to give them enough dignity and enough of a sense of repair that they're not going to come after you again. And kind of the idea. There's a little more to it than that. That has to do with base chesed. But if you want to see it tactically, that's I think what the dynamic is. And therefore we learn that Pasuk Hey, page 392, I'm in chapter 20 of Shmuel Bet, Pasuk Hey, Vayelech Amasa lahazik et Yehuda vayocher min hamoed asher ya'ado. He came late. He just didn't show up when he was expected to come. And it's not just a technical matter. He got delayed because the bus was late, and therefore he's too bad for him. He's worthy of death, because he stepped out of line or something. The point is that they were in the midst of learning, if you will, and therefore they felt that it's even more important. You say the spiritual defense of the nation was more important at that time. He couldn't justify it. Another way of looking at it, of course, which is interesting, although I did not see this written anywhere either. So now I might be speaking well beyond what I know. But it is interesting that if the house is on fire, Amasa is still trying to figure out there's some technical reason why I can't really bring the troops. I know the king said it, but halachically I have to let them learn. It's more important. Perhaps Yoav saw that as itself a total irresponsibility. There's a point after which you say there are pressing matters. The whole Malchut Beit David, God forbid, was teetering again on the edge, on the heels of the last time, which was 15 minutes ago. So what's Amasa doing? We have to wait. I'm not sure. I don't know. So this was viewed by Yoav as an egregious violation, a wanton neglect, a negligence, but more than that, maybe a little bit of a feeling from Yoav's perspective. And Rav Anan Bazak writes about this, that Amasa maybe himself was more than ambivalent about taking on this role. And now maybe, I think Rav Anan Bazak goes too far with this. I don't agree with him, quite frankly. And I'll show you why I disagree momentarily. But he really thinks that Amasa was basically a rebel. And so the way of cementing the rebellion against the house of David was now not to show up in time. Maybe. I don't see it. Let's keep reading. Explain. Yeah, sorry. Shelley, go ahead.
The problem with that particular argument is the difference between this rebellion and the first rebellion is that Avshalom was a relative of Amasa and Yoav. He was from the tribe of Yehuda. It's not quite the same thing to put the other tribes against David. Yeah. With somebody from Yehuda wouldn't countenance that kind of rebellion.
I agree. I see differences all over the place here. But let's read through it. We already read last time in the Pshat. We read a little bit about the fact that Yoav actually grabs the bull by the horns, grabs the man by the beard, and kills him. And that's what we saw at the end of last week, right? That's where we're picking it up. Where actually, unfortunately, there's the death of Amasa. And the Navi will go out of its way to tell us very graphically about the killing, and very graphically about the aftermath. The question, of course, just on the level of pshat, is why. So let's see it inside. I know I'm going back on a few psukim that we already saw. Pasuk Vav. V'yomer David al Avishai, Ata yera lanu Sheva ben Bichri min Avshalom. Sheva ben Bichri will be worse for us than Avshalom. Ata, you. Kach et avdei Adonecha uredof acharav pen matzalo arim betzurot v'itzil einenu. Before he gets to a stronghold and holds himself up, and he has mounted sort of a possible defense for himself, tactically, militarily, take people and go now. Now, he didn't say it to Yoav. He said to Avishai. Remember, there are three brothers. There's Yoav, there's Avishai, and the late Asael. Asael got killed by Avner. That was that previous story I referenced. And now Avishai is being called upon by David. Vayetzu acharav anshe Yoav. But the people were actually the people of Yoav, because Yoav had just been the chief of staff. But notice also the notion that these people were allied with Yoav, who's extremely powerful. It's the secret service. It's the honor guard. They went to go chase after Sheva ben Bichri. Now, Haim im ha'evan ha'gdola asher begiv'on v'amasa ba lifneihem v'yoav chagur mido levusho v'alav chagur cherev mitzumeret amotnav v'ta'arav hu yatsa v'atipol. We saw this pasuk already. It's the pasuk describing where they met, and the fact that the place where they met is a well-known place, and the way that Yoav is dressed, that he's still wearing the uniform of the people who are chiefs of staff. There's only one such uniform. He's in it. So he shows up this way, and everyone is sort of surprised. He's arrived. Here he is. And while we're in the mix with this discussion with Yoav is showing up, and he sees him, he pulls him aside and says, "Hey, how you doing? Let's talk a few minutes," right? And that's where he takes him by the beard as if to give him a kiss, but it's the kiss of death. Literally, he kills him at exactly that moment. Very, very, I'd say, shocking. Very, very, very dramatic. Where did they meet? Where did they meet when this happened? Right? Like, where were they actually physically standing when it happened? So we actually know where this is. It's on the screen, and put it on the screen in front of you so you could see it. Let me get rid of this. They have met in Giv'on. Now, I'm zooming in, but Giv'on is north of Yerushalayim. Look in the Psukim, it says specifically in Perek Chav Pasuk Daled, verse 20, it says where the king sent Amasa. But now Yoav meets him here. Now, why were they here north of Yerushalayim? Because Yoav and Avishai are taking everyone up here. But to get to Sheva ben Bichri, he's in a fortress here, in the walled city. Why is Amasa hanging around in Giv'on, which is north of the city of Yerushalayim, when the tribe of Judea, of Yehuda, is south of the city, down here? So Rav Amnon Bazak says that shows that he was a rebel because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't think you have to see it that way. I think it's possible the two of them converged in that place at that time because Amasa was returning with the people from Yehuda. But instead of stopping off again in Yerushalayim, he went to Giv'on. Now, what's the story with Giv'on? Why is Giv'on so important? Well, Giv'on is important for several reasons. Look, historically, Giv'on in chapter 3, Giv'on is mentioned. I have to find exactly where it is. Sorry, it actually starts in chapter 2. Chapter 2, and in Shmuel Bet, chapter 2, verse 12. And you see what's there. Yes? So there's already a history. This is like the place where rebels meet. There's like a certain, symmetry, let's say. The rebels get together in the vicinity of Giv'on to fight, or not rebels, but the warring groups get together in this place. That's where they want to have their tussle. Remember, this was after the death of Shaul. This was the meeting between the people of Avner and the people of Yoav, and that's what's going to lead ultimately, sadly, to the death of Asael in that story. All right, now look at chapter 3, verse 30. It's page 369 in the Koren Tanakh. If you want to see it there, Pasuk Lamed. It tells you again, V'Yoav Avishai Achiv hargu leAvner al asher himit et Asael achihem begivon b'milchama. Yeah. So we have it again. There's something in this place that is significant, quite significant, right? So what is it? Like, why is Givon so important? Right? There's something about this place that's drawing people to it, that it's like a stopping off place, and happens to be a place that is, of all things, north of Yerushalayim. It's not south, but north. So let me pose it as a question. What is in Givon that makes it an attractive place or a momentous place that it should be the place for these kinds of gatherings?
Can you show the topography again?
Yeah.
Does that have to do with it? That somehow it's nice and private?
It's not exactly related to topography, but it is somewhat related to the nexus between, let's say, geography and history.
You know what? In Sefer Yoshua, you have Shemesh Begivon Dom.
Shemesh Begivon Dom, another example. True enough. True enough.
So Yoshua was there too.
Yoshua was there. It was a well-known place. It is a high place. It is a high place. There are those who associate it with the place today known as Nebi Samuel, that vicinity. North of Yerushalayim, the north part of Yerushalayim, right? Yeah. And related somehow to something about, it's a known meeting place for Jews, right? So we don't really exactly know what the significance of it is overtly, except that when we look, let's say, as an example, in Sefer Divrei Hayamim, we find out that, wait a second, there was something very important going on in that place. Look in Divrei Hayamim, Aleph, chapter 21, Pasuk Chavtet. So Divrei Hayamim Aleph, if you're using a full Tanakh, Chronicles 1, chapter 29, and we find this right here, something important that is not listed overtly in Nevi'im Rishonim, but is in Chronicles. It sort of fills in the gap, like, oh, wasn't aware of that. So Chronicles 1, chapter 21, I meant to say. I got it backwards. Describes here, Umishkan Hashem, Asher Asa Moshe Bamidbar, and the Mishkan of Hashem that Moshe had made in the desert. Umizbach ha'olah ba'etahi, and the mizbech, where the offerings were offered in that time, babama begivon. So recall, there was a place before this called Nov, and Nov was an Ir Kohanim, and the Mishkan was actually in Nov. Recall that Nov, Ir Kohanim, unfortunately was destroyed by, of all things, the king. Right? Was destroyed, unfortunately, of all people, by Shaul's people, which is shocking, staggering, upsetting, but it's still the reality of the story. This same place now, where the Mishkan, whatever was left of it, moved next, it moves to Givon, and it spends time in Givon. And of all things, Givon, which has a bama, means it has a high place where as far as we can tell, it seems to mean also that the Mishkan's Bama Gdola, the high place of the Mizbeach, was actually built in that location. Is also the place where so many of these conflicts are happening. But it also explains a little bit better how we can explain the idea that Amasa is encountering Yoav Davka in this place north of Yerushalayim. Because on the way out to battle, he stopped to give some korban, he stopped to daven at the Kotel. And I'm not trying to be anachronistic about it. What's amazing is that the Navi has completely left this part out. It's like the focus is not on the fact that this is a religious center. That's sort of commentary. But the focus is this is the meeting place on the way up. And it's a place, unfortunately, of conflict. Now, the Mishkan is not going to stay there. We're going to see in Malachim Aleph, it's going to be moved from there as a structure, going to be moved to Yerushalayim. We'll see that when we get there. That's not for now. But the idea that they're moving it as a structure, by the way, they don't rebuild the Mishkan in Yerushalayim. Remember? Shlomo builds a mikdash. So they're gones, the Mishkan. They put it away. But the notion that there's a center for people to gather, and Davka there, sadly, was a terrible act of violence. Now back to Shmuel Bet Parachav, page 392 here, right? And that's where we see, sorry, Karen asking, tribe is Givon. Yes, Givon is in the tribe of Binyamin. So Rav Bazak thinks, well, why is Amasa there? He's there because he didn't listen to the king. He ignored him. He went north instead of south. He's a rebel. He's got it in for the king. I don't think that's true. I think maybe he did his mission. Maybe that's why now, after Amasai is killed, that's why everyone is following up north with Avishai and Yoav, because they were already there. They're not mentioned because it makes it sound a little bit like, well, Amasa didn't exactly listen. By the way, imagine Amasa, who's the general of the enemy, shows up in all the towns of Yehuda and says, come join me for a war. We're supporting David. 15 minutes ago, you were with the other party. You were with Avshalom. Now you joined forces with David. We made amends. We buried the hatchet. Come, we're going to go together to fight against this scourge of rebels. So Rav Navazak thinks that's like some kind of a sign that he's also a rebel. I'm really not sure that that's borne out by what we have in front of us at all. I'm just not sure.
Rabbi, at that point, I mean, at the original rebellion with Avshalom, there were lots of people from Yehuda who backed Avshalom over David, because he goes to Avshalom goes to Hebron as a sign. So I don't see how you can say that just because that all the people from Yehuda were faithful to David and not in the Avshalom.
I don't think they necessarily were. Exactly. I think there was a lot of tumult and a lot of a lot of ambivalence on their part. I'm going to fight for David. 10 minutes ago, we elected the other guy. So is this all a ploy? What exactly is the, what's the idea? What are we getting into? And it could be that that's why Amasai is delayed. He can't get the people to agree. Let's go fight the good fight. They're saying, well, we sort of already betrayed this king, so we're not sure if now we can go back and pretend like it never happened. Is there a delete button on this, or is this a setup for us to get killed? It's not clear. Yeah. So here we have it. The conflict, and now this will explain the next thing that happens, because the next thing that happens is Vayomer Yoav la'Amasa Shalom ta'achi pasuk tet. I'm going to make you think that we're brothers now, but really it's a setup for me to kill you. That's what happened, isn't it? Vayomer Yoav la'Amasa Shalom ta'achi vatoches yad yamin Yoav bizkan Amasa linshaklo. He leaned over as if to kiss him. Va'amasa lo nishmar b'cherev asher b'yad Yoav, presumably in his left hand. Vayakeu va'el hachomesh vayishpoch me'av artzav lo shana lo vayamot. It's really grotesque, extremely graphic. It doesn't just say he killed him. Let's say he caused him to trip and fall backwards into a ditch. It says he stabbed him and disemboweled him. His bowels are falling all over the place. It's really terrible. V'yoav ve'abishai achiv. Same pasuk, by the way. They killed him, and what do? They radaf acharei Yosef ben Bichri. But then you see what happens in pasuk Yud Aleph. Be'ish amad alav minara Yoav. Vayomer mi asher chafetz beYoav. So one of the lads of Yoav has to scream out loud, whoever wants the desires of Yoav and whoever favors David, go after Yoav. Notice, I said before, that power play between Yoav and David, who's really running things. Yoav has a crier saying, follow Yoav, and you'll be following David, right? But what happens? Pasuk Yud Bet, give me one more second, Karen. Where we have, V'amasa mitgolel badam b'toch hamsila. Amasa is dead on the road, on the highway, right there. Vayara ish ki amad kol ha'am. That's why the crier cries. That's why he's screaming, follow Yoav. You're following the king if you do that. Everyone is shocked. Everyone is stopped there. Vayasevet amasa min hamsila. They're stopping. So what do? They drag his body off the road, right? Vayasevet amasa min hamsila sadeh. You can leave to your imagination what was left on the road after they moved the body, right? All over the road. His guts are spilled out there. Because they saw that everybody is standing, I imagine, mouths agape. You pretended you're his brother, but really it was a setup to kill him. Yoav, most trusted chief of staff of David, who was now replaced in the quote-unquote cabinet shuffle. That's anachronistic, of course, but he was deposed, has now killed the new appointee of our king, David. And now he's saying to us, follow me. Everything will be fine. So this, by the way, when you put all these pieces into the mix, can also remind us, I said it anachronistically then, with the story of Uriah Hachiti, where the message gets to Yoav, he opens the little letter, and he says, oh, okay, Uriah, go stand in the front. And then he tells all the other troops, everybody take a step back, and Uriah gets killed. It's like, there at least he could say, well, I had a mission. Now, how is he inspiring the confidence of his troops? He just took this guy down in front of everybody. It tells you that it was very public when it happened, right? They're standing, so to speak, in the hallway of the shul, and everybody's standing there, kills him, drag the body away, they throw a garment on top. It's like, is Yoav saying, like, next? Who wants to cross me next? It's like a gangster, lahavdo?
Rabbi?
Trying to assert himself? It's unclear. Yeah, please, go ahead.
It reminds me of another thing with the Uriah thing, is how Uriah was more loyal to Yoav than he was to David, and as was everybody else at the time. So
wait, say that again. Who was? Uriah, you're saying was?
Uriah was you said at the time was more loyal, and all the army was actually more loyal to Yoav than to David.
It seems that way.
They had more to do with him or something like that. So this seems to be the same thing. The loyalty is to Yoav, and it can't help but make you wonder if Yoav wants to be king.
I shrug my shoulders in response. I don't know. It is telling that when everything is coming to a close at the sunset moment of David's life, in the last speech with his son Shlomo, he pulls him close and whispers in his ear about Yoav and the fate of Yoav. So we'll have to get there. And I will confess, I am setting us up for what's going to happen with Yoav in Sefer Malachim. So when we get there and we see what Yoav does when the chase is on against him, where he goes, what he does, we'll all be saying, this is what happened back with Amasa. Now, midah keneged midah, what goes around comes around. Karen, your point was well taken. Yeah, this did happen with a previous king, a non-Jewish king. That's back at the beginning of Sefer Shoftim.
Shoftim.
Right. That's with Ehud ben Gera, that story at the beginning. Remember?
It was subterfuge. He got
into his throne room and he leaned over and he was a lefty. Right. Same kind of idea, but here it's Jew against Jew. Here it's Jew against Jew, who it's not even clear what the guy who got killed was doing wrong. Not clear. And you see that everyone is, what? another guy got killed, and this is the guy that just mustered us as troops from Yehuda. Now we show up. Now Yoav is killing the head guy from our little group that brought us to Givon. Oy vey. But they run. They do follow Yoav up north. Pasuk Yud Daled. Vayavor b'chol shivtei Yisrael avela uveit ma'acha b'chol habeirim vayikalu vayavo af acharav. So he gets all sorts of people as he's going north, because they'll have to go up the same highway to go north to get to Avel Beit Mechola. They go up there. They arrive to the place. And when they get there, Vayavo Vayatsuru alav ba'avela Beit HaMa'acha Vayish Pechu Solula El Ha'ir Vata'amod Bachel V'chol Am Asher Et Yoav Mashchitim La'apil HaChoma. They lay siege to it, and they start putting the ladders up and building the ramparts to break down the walls of this place. Vatikra Isha Chachama Min Ha'ir, a wise woman. We don't know her name, but she's a wise woman. She saves the city through her actions. And she calls out, Shimu, Shimu, Imruna El Yoav, Kravad Henav Adabra Ilecha. So obviously she knows who Yoav is, and she knows he's the one in charge, and she calls him forward, and he does come forward, and they have a small conversation. Vayikra Veleha, Vatomer Ha'isha, Ha'ata Yoav, Vayomer Ani. Let me pause here just to mention, highly unusual that the defenders of the city in antiquity, who are men, certainly, who are fighting as soldiers, and is probably a chieftain of the town, have in their midst a wise woman who is going to save all of them and is going to take the initiative to speak with the chief of staff of the army that has come to destroy everyone in the city in order to get one man. It's the manhunt. But she's very wise. So she comes close to him. Vatomer Isha ta Yoav, Vayomer Ani. Vatomer lo shma divrei amatecha, Vayomer shomea anochi. Listen to what I have to say. I'm your maidservant. And he says, I am listening. Vatomer lemor, daber yidabru varishona lemor, shol yishalu ve'avel ve'chein hei tamu. Right? So, she says, well, why don't you just ask them to sort of give up? That would be okay. It would be good. They don't want to fight with you. This is not about our people. It's about the interloper who showed up, who's taken us over. Anochi. Next page. Shalume emune Yisrael. Atam mevakesh lamit ir ve'em b'Yisrael. Lama tevala nachlat Hashem. In this violence you're about to perpetrate against our town, you're going to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. You know a mother in Israel from Amit? That's where it's from. Not as cheery as we would have liked, but that is what it is, right? You're going to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Now, you understand, she's the mother in Israel, and she's the one doing the talking. It's not like accidental that it describes it this way, right? It's Davka, this idea that she is called out to him, that she is speaking, right? And she's making inroads to draw a parallel between herself in her maternal role and the notion that this is the city that is itself going to birth other very faithful Jews within the Jewish nation. Yeah? So here's the idea. She's in a way, what's the word? Inserting herself to describe that she is, what's the word? She's going to be the peacemaker. Going to bring everybody together. Okay. We'll come back to this woman in a minute. Let's finish the actual story. And I saw what you wrote. Shelley, you're always right there. And sometimes you're a step ahead of us. So let's hold on a minute. Okay, so what's the description? Vayan Yoav Yomar, Chalila Chalila li im avala v'im ashchit. I'm not a violent person. Who, me? No. I'm not going to. I'm not trying to do this, right? But what am I trying to do? I'm actually trying to take care of a problem. Lo chena davar ki ish mehar Ephraim sheva ben bichri shmo Nasaya doba melech beDavid, tnuoto levado, ve'elcha me'al ha'ir. Just let me have him, and I'll be gone. I'll be out of here. I don't have to keep keep on with it. I'll just go my merry way after I can get rid of him, right? So Vatomari Shel Yoav, Hine Rosho Mushlach Elecha Be'ad Choma. Oh, don't worry, we're about to send his head over the side of the wall. Now she said this, but she hadn't actually spoken to anybody else about this, right? You see that there's no actual movement here. It hasn't happened yet. So she goes to them and she explains this to them. This is our option now, right? So they listen to her, right? And when they do this, they cut off his head. Excuse me. They blow the shofar, meaning end of story. We're done. And what happens next? They go home. V'yoav shav Yerushalayim el Melech. V'yoav el kol hatzava Yisrael uVnai ben Yehoyada ala kreti v'ala pleti. V'nai ben Yehoyada, we're going to need him later. So let's wait. He's coming. We'll see this. We'll see this shortly. We just haven't gotten there yet. And he's going to be an important person. According to some, he's the one who's prosecuting the trial of Yoav, and we understand why. He's also in the echelons of power and of control. So he seems to have a very important, whatever the word is, very important function, I would say, in the political echelons and the judiciary coming up. So like general is going to try general, but that's not for now. That's for the next Sefer. So you have to come back for that. And we're not going to see that now. Okay. So now I'm skipping what you said, Shelley, rather, about this issue that we have here of the possibility that it's someone else from much earlier in Jewish history, which is mind-boggling because she'd have to be hundreds of years old, many hundreds of years old. We'll get there. I applaud you, Karen, for saying it might be the invention of volleyball. It might be a macabre volleyball at that. I want to thank you again, Karen. By the way, we thanked you in absentia right before you got on the call for sponsoring today, and I'm much obliged. And I thank everyone in the shir that makes the shir the shir. So someone has written in, albeit privately, what about the problem here of Yarig Val Yavor? We have a principle in halacha, and the principle is pretty simple. It basically argues that if someone, God forbid, puts a gun to someone else's head and says, either you kill so-and-so or we'll kill you, the halacha teaches that this is one of three major sins that a person ought to forfeit their life before they violate. And how is that not this case? Yoav came to the city. He said to them, just so you realize, I'm going to kill everybody here. I'm going to destroy it. And she says, well, why would you do that? I urge you, I beg you, let's take care of the problem. We know who the problem is. Yes, he says, I'm not here for everybody, I'm here for one man. So what happens? Yeah.
Doesn't it matter that he's a rebel against the king? It's not like your average put a gun to somebody's head and say, you kill so-and-so or we kill you.
Excellent point. And that's probably part of the question, part of the problematic when you think about it, right? It's not a case where so-and-so said to so-and-so, you are worthy of death. So we're going to have you killed, and we're going to ask someone else to do it, and everyone can do it, right? Here, it actually is, politically speaking, an actual case where what's going on? This guy rebelled against the king, right? So join me, if you will. This that we just learned now to the end of chapter 20 is actually a halachic sugya. The halachic sugya I referenced at the beginning. I'm putting it up on the screen. It actually goes right back to the time of Chazal. And I'm going to have it right in front of you now so we can look at it together. Okay? So here we have the Tosefta. Is actually originally it's a Mishnah Masechet Trumot. I'm giving you the Tosefta version because it's more filled out. But the Tosefta is in many ways subservient. Subservient is the wrong word. It's in the pecking order of significance. It's not as high as the Mishnah, but this is actually an expansion of the Mishnah Masechet Trumot in chapter 8. It's a bit of a different case there. Decided to start with this, and you'll see that this is what the Tosefta describes. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so everyone can see. Let me just minimize this. Everyone can see. Okay, we're good. So here we go. Sayashal b'nei Adam. There's a caravan of people. Sha'amru lahem goyim, the non-Jews, say to them, Tnu lanu echad mikem v'nargeu, give us one among you, and we will kill him. V'im lav harei anu horgim et kulchem. And if not, then we'll kill all of you. Says the Tosefta, yargu kulan al yimsur lehen nefesh achat mi Yisrael. Everyone should die. They should not start drawing lots to choose who should get killed. Aval, however, im yachduhu lahem. If they said specifically who they want, kigon sheyichdu l'shev ben bichri, like they said specifically, we came for Shev ben bichri, yitnu lahen v'al yargu kulan. If they specify the name of the person, then they should give them over, and they should not all be killed. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Bamid Varim Amurim. When is this case applicable? Bisman shehu mi bifneim v'hemi bachutz. It's a time when he's inside and they, the marauders, are outside. Aval bisman shehu mi bifneim v'hemi bifneim, hovhu nerag v'hei neragin yitnu lahem. However, at a time when he's inside and they're all inside as well, so since they're all going to be killed, so in that case, you can give this person away, i.e., but in a case where the one is inside and the rest of them are outside with the marauders, so why do they have to be the ones to do it? Let the marauders go in and get him. They don't have to do the dirty work. It's only if everybody's inside together. That was the case of Ben Bichri. Everyone was inside together, and everyone was under equal threat, right? But if they're all in, if there's a case where actually that individual is sequestered, so you don't have to be the shliach to go give someone over. V'chein hu omer, batavo ha'isha el kol ha'am b'chochmata, and as it says, she came in her wisdom to all of the people. Amra lahen, she said to them, that was her argument. Ho'lev hu nerag v'atem neragim, since everyone's going to be killed, tnu lahem. Let not all of us be killed. That was her argument. So that's Rabbi Yehuda saying it has to be a case where actually everyone's under equal threat at the same time. When you can decide, so now we have to be the ones to give over this person with our hands. If not, so why do we have to be the shliach dvar vera for this other group? Rabbi Shimon Omer, kach amar lahem. You know what she was actually telling them? She basically was telling them this. Anyone who goes up against the kingdom of the house of David is worthy of being killed, and he's a rebel. According to Rabbi Shimon, which I don't see in the Pshat, but Rabbi Shimon maintains that when she came to the people and she spoke to them, what she was basically telling them in her wisdom, because it does not say what she spoke to them about, she told them, look, he's guilty. He's a mord b'malchut. We're helping our king by getting rid of him. Now, the fact that it's ambiguous, though, leaves it a little bit open, because the argument she had made to Yoav was, why are you killing all of us? You just want him? So I'll get his head thrown over the edge, over the wall. In that case, it was a tactical statement on her part, and maybe she used that tactic with them as well. In the latter case, Rabbi Shimon's view is that no, really, this man is worthy of being killed. L'may nafkamina. They didn't open the gate and throw him out and give him to Yoav, go put him on trial. It says they cut off his head. So if it's because he's a mord b'malchut, then it makes sense. But if the issue is that in the case that's given to us, at least in the Tosefta, that the non-Jewish marauders, by the way, here everybody's Jewish also, right? The non-Jewish marauders said, give us so-and-so, or else we'll kill everybody. But they said the name of the so-and-so. So that doesn't mean that the Jews can kill that Jew. It means they can give him over. Maybe there'll be a nace. Maybe be saved. But B'derech HaTeva, the halacha is they have to give him over. Yeah, that's a Tosefta. The Talmud Yerushalmi has this exact sugya and gives us a little bit of a different spin on this story. The Talmud Yerushalmi gives us a little more details and applies it as a halachic principle. Tani seoch bnei adam shimahachim derech pagu behet lahen goyim v'amru tnu lanu echad mikem v'na'rogoto v'im lav harei anu horgim et kulchem afilu kulam neragim lo yimsu nefesh achat miYisrael. Right, same thing as the Tosefta. Anybody who has marauders, non-Jews come, they say give us so and so. If they said the name of the so and so, then they can give them up. Yichtu lahen echad kigon shem bichri yimsuru oto v'layihargu. They don't all have to die, right? Yeah. So that's the first view that we find here in the Yerushalmi, just like Tosefta, and it's codified there in the Yerushalmi. We don't find this story in the Bavli. Karen, go ahead.
Rabbi, I'm just wondering why this was not put in terms of the person himself who's being called out. So that it was, if that situation, if they're asking for you, it's your responsibility to go out. And then if you don't, then the other people can send you out. Making it less murky.
I don't know. I presume the person could give themselves up. The assumption here is that they didn't want to give themselves up. So does the group have the right to say to the individual, we're sorry, but we come first?
Okay. So that's just the unspoken beginning of what this is.
I believe so. Larry, were you trying to say something?
Yes. What Karen's saying brings to mind, they have, whether it was justified or not, they did the killing. Considering that they were able to kill him, I'm assuming they would have been able to have tied him up and then thrown him out. And then Yoav do the killing.
Yeah, which is why the memra from Rabbi Shimon in the Tosefta
is so important.
It's so important. Now, this is the machloket. The next part of the Yerushalmi goes like this: Amr Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, v'hu sheyeh chayav mita kishav ben bichri. In order for this to be true, the statement above that if the group can say to the individual, "You're out of here. We're giving you over to the non-Jewish authorities," the person has to actually be obligated to be put to death, like Sheva ben Bichri. They have to be guilty of an actual crime. V'Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Afal Pishenu Chayav Mita K'Sheva ben Bichri. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says, no, doesn't matter if the person's guilty or not. Now, what I'm saying is the narration of the story on the level of pshat in Sefer Shmuel Bet seems to me to lean in the direction of Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish, right? Because the people in the town killed him. They were carrying out like the extrajudicial killing of a man who was a rebel against the king. That's what you do. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, it wouldn't even matter in terms of giving him over. According to Reish Lakish or Rabbi Yochanan, the idea that they killed him would be, according to Rabbi Yochanan, rather, the idea would be strange. Why are they doing the killing? Why don't they give him over, like you said, tie him up, send him out, and whatever happens, happens, right? Ula bar Kushev. There's another story. Tavate malchuta arak v'azil le lelud. Gabi Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Atun v'ak from Medinta. So unfortunately, and this was not uncommon, in the wake of the Korban of the second Beit HaMikdash, so the garrison arrived. They came to Lod, and they did the same thing. Amur lahen, they said to the people of Lod, in late atun yavun le lan, anan machrivin medinta. So it's, the story here is actually sounds familiar. That actually these people came and they said, we're gonna take everybody unless you give us so and so. Now look at the Gemara here. Sorry, where am I here? Tavate Malchuta. Actually, there was this, in this case, was a case where this person, Ula Bar Kashuv, was found guilty of a crime by the Roman authorities' standards, not Jewish standards. Was it trumped up charge? Was it a libel? We don't know. What we do know is he was found to be guilty. So Atun, says the Pnei Moshe, the Anshe Chal, the soldiers came, Anshe Chal HaMelech, the Kivulam Dina, they surrounded the province of Lida, would say in English, right? Lida, but Lud. V'amru lahen, im en ater notlin oto lanu achrivet kol medina. Sorry, we'll destroy everything. V'ola Rabbi Shua ben Levi etzlo ufaisei sheitratz legalot atzmo. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and this is the Karen's point, went to convince this man to give himself up, reveal himself. Shelo yistaken kol bnei medina avuro, that not everyone should be put in risk because of him. And what happened? V'nitratze, he was appeased, he agreed. Umasr tolahen, and he gave himself over. Now go back to the Gemara. Salah gabe Rabbi Shua ben Levi faisei v'yavilon, and he gave himself over. Now, next part of the story. Vav Eliyahu zachur latov yolef mitigle ilave v'lo yitgale. So Eliyahu Hanavi used to apparently appear often to Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and suddenly he stopped coming. So v'tzam kamet somin. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi fasted many different fasts. V'yitgale ilave, and so Eliyahu Hanavi came back and appeared to him. So basically, what happened? He said to him, basically, where have you been? Like I haven't seen you, right? You had to do all of this. This fighting words. Amar le, ulamasorot ani megaleh. You want me to be megal myself? I should reveal myself to a person who is one who masters others, gives them over to non-Jewish authorities. Said Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Amar le v'lo mishnah asiti. I mean, this is the halacha. What do you want from my life? I did what's supposed to happen, right? The Tosefta, the Yerushalmi. I followed the law. Said Eliyahu Hanavi to him, Amar le v'zu mishnah the Hasidim. And is this halacha really the way of pious people? End of story. So look here in the Pnei Moshe. V'lo mishnah asiti shekashni b'tosefta v'im yichdu lahen mutter. It's permissible. Said Eliyahu Hanavi to him, v'heshiv lo v'chizu mishnah chasidim v'yalach al salek atzmecha me'inyan zeh. You should have recused yourself from it. This was not something that you, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, should be involved in. It's a troubling story, a troubling end to the story, strange end to the story. I mean, here Rabbi Shua ben Levi, instead of being praised for saving the town, is being criticized by Eliyahu Hanavi for not being kind enough. He made a terrible triage. This triage was happening in the 20th century, sadly, we know, in Europe. It was different there, by the way. It was different on two fronts. Different, number one, because the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, did not come to ghettos and say, give us the following people, but they said, you choose. And the halacha is very clear, Yarg Val Yavor. On the other side, however, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, did not make it clear, and this is the murky part, did not make it clear why they were taking these people away. And of course, the debate was, well, did you have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out? Well, in retrospect, everybody knows, but in their time, their place, when they were taking various people who were, let's say, old, maybe it had a different connotation than we were taking people who were young, who maybe were being sent to work, question mark, right? Sadly, we know that, let's say, in the Warsaw Ghetto, the most famous examples we have in Warsaw, in Lodz, different places where the Judenrat, unfortunately, they were co-opted by the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. And they had their own arguments, counter-arguments in some cases. In the Warsaw Ghetto, the head of the Judenrat killed himself when he became aware of the fact that he had been complicit, basically, in shipping all these people off to their death. You have these diaries, these first-hand accounts, and here you see, though it's unresolved. Eliyahu Hanavi says, you had no business doing this. Rambam, Hilchot Yesodei Torah, Perek Hey. I know we're coming to the end of our time, about 3 minutes left, so we're not going to get through all the sources here, but just to show you that this is an in-depth halachic sugya. Nashim she'amru lahem ovdei kochavim. This is actually from the Mishnah in Shrumot. Tnu lanu achat miken v'nitma ota v'im lav nitma et kulchem. In horrific stories, the idolaters come to a group of women. They say, "Give us one among you. You choose. Otherwise, we'll defile all of you. And if you give us one, we'll just defile her." So the halacha in Hilchot Yisodei HaTorah yitnu kulan v'yimser lam nefesh achat miYisrael. No one should be given over. Same thing. Give us one and we'll kill him. Everyone should die. Should not decide to choose who goes. If the claim is give us so and so and we won't kill all of you. If the person actually was guilty, then they could be given over. But if not, stam they just choose. That's not permissible. But look what the Rambam does next. Uncharacteristic for the Rambam. I'm telling you this halacha. I'm writing it in my book, Foundations of the Torah, chapter 5. This is not something we teach. We don't teach this lechatchila. We don't instruct them to do this. If that's what ends up happening, so you could justify it on the grounds that this person was actually found guilty and worthy of death by the standard of the government. But we don't teach this, meaning we're dealing with a horrific situation. However, v'im eino chayav mita yagu kulan v'yimsru lahem nefesh achat miYisrael. But if this person is not chayav mita, they're not really obligated. You put to death by any standard, then they should all be killed and they should not give up even a single Jew. I note that the rape case is not mentioned as anyone, if they mention the name out loud, and it seems patently obvious to me, that's because there's no standard, no case, no way that they could build a case that there's some obligation from the government that this is the way it needs to be. Yeah. The question that is going to be left unresolved, is for today, as we're out of time, is what if that government is unjust? What if that government is, and in the case in Yerushalmi, we saw it, it's the Romans found someone worthy of death. So is it that the people say, Dina de Malchuta Dina, what can we do? Or is it that the people say, well, we're not authenticating that what this government has done is correct. They may be a horrific government, but we're being held hostage here by this government. I mean, we live under their thumb, so we're subservient to them. They subjugate us, and now they've presented us with this impossible dilemma, and we don't know what to do. So in this case, we need to take the case of the many over the few. This is also related in Western civilization, 20th century. There's a whole body of knowledge. You can look it up online if you're interested. It's called the trolley problem. And the trolley problem is you are in charge of the switching of a track of a trolley that's gotten out of control. If it continues to careen in the direction that it's going, it will hit and kill 5 people. But if you flick the switch, it'll shift. The train will now no longer hit 5 people. Instead, it will hit 1 person. So can you make the switch? And they're all different variations back and forth. It's like studied at great universities back and forth, trying to parse this 20th century problem called the trolley problem. What if there's all sorts of permutations about it? Whatever. They start switching it. What if the 1 person is your family member and the 5 people are not your family member? What if the 5 people were convicted felons, not guilty of death, worthy of death? They're convicted felons. They're crooks, and the 1 person is a Nobel laureate. So how do you choose, or vice versa, right? The 1 person is right. You keep going around and around. The basis for this, from our vantage point, is in the Torah and is in the Torah Shebaal Peh, and is sourced in Torah Shebichtav right here in this Navi, in this discussion. Yeah, the back and forth that goes on. So let me take some of the comments just in closing. Happy to try to discuss further about the kapos and the Judenrat. These are very, very complicated issues. I'm not, by the way, standing in judgment of people who are in such terrible straits. I'm just pointing out some of the pathways to think about it are actually in Shas, and some of the pathways are incredibly tortuous ones at that. And you see that Rabbi Shimon Levi did the right thing according to halacha. Eliyahu Navi tells him, no, that was terrible. The Rambam writes, this is the halacha. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody? What do you mean? Sometimes within the system of halacha, and my teacher, Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik, makes this point, there are sometimes a situation where the system is an extremis, where there actually isn't a clear path forward. Even the halacha starts going back and forth about what you could make arguments on the books, but are there other principles at play, and how do you reconcile these components? There's a lot of back and forth here, obviously to be had. We're kind of out of time. I never got to the Serach Bat Asher. I guess that's why we're getting together next week. So I'll try next week to start the shir with the conversation specifically on the subject of trying to parse some more of these sources to get a little more into it, but specifically to get back to the Serach Bat Asher connection and why that is or isn't the pshat in this story, what its significance might be on another plane. Okay, we have no time left, so I'll bid everyone good rest of the day. I wish everyone blessings of peace and good things on all levels. And Mirz Hashem, by the time we get together next week, we'll be everyone hopefully, a little more settled on all levels, and we'll be able to see some of the sources inside and then to move into chapter 21.